Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Tinker Talks. Tinker Talks is the audio format podcast that discusses what's going on behind the fence line of one of the Air Force's largest Air Force bases. Today, we are continuing our conversation about coronavirus, COVID-19 to be specific, and today we're going to tackle a unique subject of one of the most important functions on it, actually not just to the Tinker Air Force Base or the Air Force, but to any organization, and that's talking logistics. So today we are going to discuss what happens before coronavirus and how the coronavirus has affected the Logistics Readiness Squadron here at Tinker Air Force Base. And so today we do have joining with us Brent Burgess. He is the director of the 72nd Air Base Wing Logistics Readiness Squadron, forever known from hereafter as LRS. So I want to call you Greg because that's actually your name, but you go by Brent, correct?
I go by Brent. Yeah, that's my middle name.
Sorry about that.
But my dad and I have the same first name, and he works out here as well. And so I'm a good case study. And don't name your kid the same name as you, especially if you happen to work at the same place. It's never-ending forwarding emails and things of that nature.
And I would have to say that would be some really, really great foresight if you thought just prior to birth and naming your child that we might be working at the same location.
Right.
So
I know when my children were born, that was the first thing I thought. Where are they going to work? And will that be an issue when it comes to email?
Well, as you know, as a parent, one of the things we strive for is to make sure that our kids are smarter than we were. So your dad has obviously achieved this in this effort with you. So good news, good thinking. And just so everybody knows, this is another episode where we are recording via telephone. Due to COVID and us not being able to get into the same room for a little while longer. I am at my house office, if you're going to call it that. It does have a desk and a door, so it's close enough, right? I just can't claim it on taxes. And but you are in your office, so
I am.
You are there fighting the good fight today, sir. So
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, it's actually kind of funny. I have actually been in office most of this time, but pretty much my entire squadron has not. And so it's been basically me in this building by myself. We're starting to phase people in now, but I've kind of gotten used to the nice parking and just kind of having the building to myself here over the last few months. So it's going to be an adjustment as we start to get back to what we're calling returning to full capacity.
That's true, the spoils. So before we jump into LRS and talking about the amazing things that your people are accomplishing, maybe you could just give our listeners the quick 200-word or less rundown about who you are and how you got to this position.
Yeah, so as you said, I am the director of the Logistics Readiness Squadron here. Have been the director for about 2 years. I actually was the operations manager for about 4 years prior to that, which is analogous to like deputy director. Have been here at Tinker for about to be 20 years this year. And so really kind of came out here actually when I was still in high school. Was a aircraft sheet metal mechanic when I first came out here, and I like to joke it started with a boy and a dream, but kind of fell into it really. I had a friend who was in A&P school, which for anybody who doesn't know what that is, airframe and power plant school, which is typically what you would have to go to get a license to work on aircraft, and he had kind of encouraged me to get into the program, and so that wound up. I wound up doing that, and that wound up turning into a job here, and 20 years later, here I am. So it's been great. I've enjoyed every job I've done here. I think working on the floor, working in production, it definitely may have not fully appreciated it at the time, but I can definitely tell you that it gives a very unique perspective and an important perspective that in my experience, not everyone has in some of the jobs that I interact with folks today. So.
Right, that's pretty incredible. So I'm sure at some point you didn't figure that the aircraft mechanic sheet metal work would take you into logistics.
No, I didn't really. I did that for about 7 or 8 years, and I was going to school at the same time. So kind of, I would get off work, and then I would change clothes and go to school at night, and I did that for a lot of years. And and actually eventually got picked up as an instructor. So I worked over in the Force Support Squadron for a while, and so that was kind of my first job outside of production, and then actually ended up going back to the complex later and doing some transformation, strategic planning type stuff. But no, I mean, 17 years old, came to work out here, never thought that I would be running a squadron or getting to work with folks that do all these awesome things day in and day out. It wasn't something I was thinking at the time.
That's pretty incredible. And rumor has it that you have been voted best beard on the base.
Humility is my number one attribute, as I like to tell people.
Right.
But I have heard people say that, best beard I've ever seen. Honestly, I actually get really random comments on the beard and a lot of compliments. I was at Walmart, a year or so ago and checking out, and the lady was just like, hey, that's a nice beard you got there.
That's awesome. Hey, there are worse things to have, correct?
That is true. Now, I haven't been as lucky on the top of my head. As you know, I am bald, so thankfully I'm able to grow some facial hair.
Hey, not a bad thing. So can you just go ahead and give us a little bit of background on what the Logistics Readiness Squadron does, especially prior to the COVID world that we live in now?
Right. Gotcha. Yeah, so here at the 72nd LRS, of course, we are a squadron made up of about 250-ish people, and that actually spans military, civilian, and contractors. And contractors are actually our largest group of folks. We have 4 contracts in the squadron, but kind of big picture, if I were just to kind of give you, kind of a bumper play to that, it would just be, we provide logistics support to the warfighter. And when I say that, we're saying base supply, we're talking about transportation, readiness, fuels, traffic management, precision measuring equipment, things of that nature. So if you see vehicles going around on the base that have government tags, if you see refueling vehicles going around the base, if you see aircraft that are getting refueled or defueled, that's all us, right? So we do that for 5 MAJCOMs. We do it for the Navy. We do it on behalf of the AFSC. So it's a big mission. When we talk household goods, not only are we doing Tinker proper, but we're doing the region, right? So we're doing movements to and from the base. So if military members, you PCS in, you PCS out, we're handling that for a large region, and it crosses services. We're not just doing it for the Air Force. So a big mission that goes on with a small group of people, but a phenomenal group of people working day in and day out to make that happen.
Wow, that is a lot. And so when I said in the beginning that is one of the most important pieces of any organization, I mean, logistics, just listening to everything you just described that you guys handle, I mean, would you say do you guys touch basically every organization on the base in some way or form, even the reserves?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, especially when we talk vehicles, we talk fuel, we talk household good movements, supply. That's not just an Air Base wing thing. That's not just an Air Force thing. It's not just a active duty thing. It's holistic. When we talk big A airmen, I mean, we touch all of those all across the installation.
Wow. And so you guys, that's a whole lot of, I mean, we're talking touching, and there's obviously a lot to do with your squadron. Do you also run is it the airlift? Do we have MAC flights here at Tinker? I know there's
Yeah.
some flights. It's not really extremely busy, but we do some airlift stuff, correct? Right? For passenger?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, we do have a PAX terminal, and we do have what they call Space A flights that do come in occasionally. It's definitely not a huge business, but we do have them in and out occasionally. And that is a function that we perform here.
Man, so you guys, you are involved. And are they still called MAC flights?
Well, MAC is kind of an old term. I guess it would be AMC now, but we still refer to this as like the MAC ramp. We'll still call it the MAC ramp, even though MAC hasn't been around for a long time.
Right. Well, when I was growing up, that was 3,000 years ago. That's what we called it, MAC flights.
Yeah, and we still do. Well,
it's good to know we haven't lost all of the the old terms. So,
right.
How much of your squadron was able to telework when this pandemic hits? And obviously, you guys do an awful lot of hands-on and togetherness in your unit. So, How much, and you don't have to break it down specific by percentages or numbers, but was a good deal of your squadron able to start teleworking?
Yeah, actually, thankfully, yes. And I can tell you that, again, going back to the kind of foresight thing, this wasn't something that we did thinking, hey, someday there may be a pandemic that this will be helpful during. But 3 or 4 years ago, we actually went 100% laptop in our squadron, right? So we moved away totally from the desktop, and we rolled laptops out across the entire squadron. Again, at the time, it was not only to enable telework, but it was also for any type of coop activity. If you have to do any type of relocating due to some type of event that would happen. So when we fast forward to the COVID, that's, I guess, now we're going on 3 or 4 months of this. We, again, didn't think at the time, hey, let's do this so we'll be ready. But in doing so, we just happened to have been pretty able to almost do telework, I would say, with almost 100% of our folks. So prior to this, most everyone was situationally able to telework, right?
Right.
Not everyone chose to do so. We definitely left it up to the individuals. If their position was one in which telework was something that could be done, then we would also say, hey, if you'd like to do so, and I'm not going to force you to do it. So I'd say prior to this, we probably had about 50% of our civilians doing so.
Okay.
And then, of course, over the last few months, we've gone to I would say about 90% of our civilians and military teleworking full time. We have some that continued to come into the office occasionally, and if those folks were in the same office, of course, trying to manage that so we don't have a whole bunch of folks in the office at the same time. With our contractors, some of those positions are simply not able to telework. So we talk about transportation. We do all of the ground trans. So if you see the base shuttle going around, if you see buses coming to pick up or drop off air crew, that's us. But we also do all the maintenance, right, on those vehicles. And so as you could probably imagine, it's very difficult to do any type of maintenance, whether it be aircraft or vehicle maintenance, from your home teleworking, right?
Right.
And so some areas we simply weren't able to do that. So we had to look at, okay, we're gonna try to socially distance as much as we can. We're going to make sure the folks that are working those areas have masks, have gloves, have all the PPE they need. We're going to make sure that we double down on cleaning. But as far as the folks that could telework, we are just now transitioning out of almost the entire squadron teleworking on, if not a full-time basis, at least a reoccurring basis.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. And so how difficult has it been for your guys or the people that do have to actually go in, say, the pallet builders or whatever other types of things that you do there? How difficult was it to come up with this very quick transition from we're standing on top of each other to all the distancing practices and face masks and things of that nature?
Right. Normally, I would say that would be very difficult, and it still was, but I will say that the stop movement somewhat made that a little bit easier. And so, when there was a stop movement that came down that basically said, hey, we're not PCSing people in, we're not PCSing people out. And as far as, people who are deploying or redeploying, we put a stop on a lot of that. So in turn, that's going to decrease a lot of my customer traffic in my personal property office, in my travel office. You talked about pallet builders, so less cargo coming in or going out, right?
Right.
And so due to that, it made that a little bit easier to do. And so our military folks, we basically just said, look, if we're not working a mission, then I want you guys teleworking, right? We're only going to come in if we absolutely need to come in and actually, like you said, do some pallet build up, things of that nature. And when we do so, we're going to make sure we have the PPE so that if we can't maintain 6 feet distance, which is difficult to do when you're doing work like that, that we're able to do it in a safe manner.
Right.
Now I'll say, I talked about we have 4 contracts, so I have a lot of contract oversight, right? And so that becomes somewhat difficult. There's a lot of things we look at from a contracting officer representative point of view that is administrative in nature, and you could probably do a lot of those inspections from your home, right, virtually, which is kind of the way we've trended just in general in the Air Force, right, doing a lot of inspections virtually. But there are some that you can't. You have to do those on site, and so those things have to continue to happen. We can't just say, "Hey, we're not going to surveil the contract during this time." And so that's where our QA manager and our cores had to kind of really sit down and go, "Okay, here's how we're going to accomplish this for the on-site visits. We're going to minimize the number of personnel we bring out to do that. We're going to make sure that we socially distance when we're doing so." And so a lot of it was just kind of thinking outside the box. How would we do this? How can we make sure that we keep people safe at the same time that we're also making sure that we're getting everything done that we need to get done?
Right.
So now we're phasing back in, right? And so in the latter part of May, we started going to about 2 days a week in the office. And now this is the 1st of June. We're starting in June, going back to 3 days. And the goal being, as we continue to see the data trend in the right direction, that we will continue that all the way back to as close to normal as we can get. And so for us, that was always having people telework in some capacity.
Right.
Again, where we can't distance, we're going to have masks, especially common areas. We share this building, our main building here, with a lot of folks. And so just, looking at how are we going to do that as we phase people back in.
Right. And so when you guys first started this process, because, obviously the military is big on planning, and we have a lot of plans already in place, but nothing quite specific to what we did here. So did you have a team of people in your squadron sit down and start to look at what the reality is of how you make 6 feet apart and wearing face masks work?
We did, yeah. Really got the leadership team together. So our flight chiefs, I got our section chiefs together, and looking at, what is that going to look like? What are some steps we can take? CE here at the Air Base Wing actually really leaned forward and said, "Hey, put work orders in if you guys want to get some plexiglass put up in your customer service areas." So we leaned forward and did that. So as we are returning to having customers in the office, if you go into our personal property office, if you go into our travel office, you're going to see plexiglass shields, very similar to what you may have seen if you've been out and about in gas stations or department stores.
Right.
And so that's been awesome. We, especially in our customer service areas where we're going to have people coming and going, having that layer of protection. Again, looking at making sure that we're distanced as much as possible. In some of our areas where, we have a lot of cubicles that are close together,
right,
as we phase back in, looking at trying to have people telework on alternate days. So I don't literally have all of my folks here in the office on the same day. I have maybe 1 or 2 that will allow us to have enough distance. Hallways become problematic, right? You're walking past people in hallways, so we're having to look at maybe one-way hallways, and also, again, utilizing the mask when appropriate.
Right. Yeah, and that's a thing in our office too, is that if you're coming out of and now we're about the same as you guys. We're running like 50% of the crew rotating telework schedules. But if you come out of your office and you've got to get into the hallway, you've got a mask with you just in case. Do you foresee the future, like you talk about putting up the plexiglass in your customer service areas? Is that something you guys are going to maintain as a permanent situation, or are you going to pull those down someday? Or have you even talked about it?
We really haven't even talked about it, but I definitely don't foresee doing any changes to that in the near term, and the near term really meaning throughout the rest of this year. Mm-hmm. To me, this is going to be kind of a new normal for a while.
Right.
And so, I think we'll have them for a while. I think the masks will be here for a while, which is, I know we'll talk about this a little bit later, but when you talk about procuring 70,000 cloth masks, you think, oh my gosh, that's a lot of masks. But the thought being that this isn't something that's going to be kind of just one and done.
Right.
There's going to be some type of safety measure that's going to need to be in place over the long term, whether we're in Charlie or we're Bravo, Alpha. This is going to be the new normal for quite a while, and so we wanted to kind of take a long-term approach when we looked at trying to order a lot of that PPE.
Right. Good thinking. And so workers there, I'm sure, kind of like anywhere, are kind of afraid of the unknown. So how were you guys able to, or how were you able to help your team through their fears and stay focused and positive, especially, we're talking about several months now that we've been doing this with really still no quite clear realization of what it is that we're dealing with or where it's going. So how were you able to keep everybody focused and positive to keep performing an extremely vital mission?
Yeah, it is unprecedented. I remember just sitting around sometimes thinking, man, it's just so strange. It felt like, and it has felt like the never-ending snow day is kind of what I refer to it as.
Right.
It's like we're kind of in this posture as if, like we would be if we had a snow day. Yet you go outside and it's beautiful outside, and it just seems so strange. But I can tell you what the way I have tried to approach this, and I've talked with my leadership team, and the leadership team has approached this, is that you really can't communicate too much. Right? I think that you talked about fears, staying positive. I think that's much easier to do when you feel like you are getting the information you need to be in the loop about what's going on, right? If you're in a situation in which you don't know what's going on, you're not getting any information, I think that breeds the fear and the maybe going negative. And so I really have made an effort to communicate more than I ever have in the past, especially now that I'm not seeing people on a day in and day out basis, right? So,
Right.
Normally everybody comes to work, you see everyone, hey, how you doing? How was the weekend? You got big plans tonight, things of that nature. Can't do that as much, right? So I have to be more intentional with shooting emails out to folks, to picking up the phone, right? Which is maybe not something we usually go to, but picking up the phone and just saying, hey, what's going on? How are you doing? And I've really stressed that with our leadership team is like, hey, make sure every day that you're reaching out to somebody and just saying, hey, how are things going? Right.
Right.
Sharing info that we get from Colonel Philcheck, which comes down from AFMC, making sure that we're keeping folks in the loop. And so, we get a daily update on COVID from the Med Group. So I make sure I share that information with my leadership team, and in turn, they share it with their folks so that everybody knows, hey, here's where we're at. Here's the current information.
Right.
And again, we didn't do this intentionally, but it just kind of happened to work out during this time, is that, for the last few years, we have rotated where we do staff meetings. And so I'm not a big fan of just every week doing a staff meeting in the same room. So I said, hey, every week I want to go out to a different building in our squadron, and we'll do staff meeting there, and so I can get out and actually see people. And when we do a lot of walk the wall type stuff, I'm getting to actually see the processes that are going on. Well, we transitioned a bit the beginning of this year to still going out to the areas, but not actually having everyone join us there. We allowed people to actually call in via, a DCO, and we could pull the charts up there. We could have a call in. And so we did that. And then 2 months later, that was kind of the new normal, right?
Right.
And so in light of that, I wanted to look at opportunities to try to make sure that we broadened the attendance of some of those meetings. So in the past, maybe staff meeting primarily just had, my flight chiefs, my section chiefs. I just put it out there and said, you know what, if anybody in the squadron wants to call in the staff meeting, you can do so, right? So again, just trying to increase opportunities to share information with folks.
Mm-hmm.
I already said, equipping everybody with PPE, making sure that we reach out and touch folks, especially people that have been teleworking for long periods of time. As we're phasing back in now, there's people that I haven't seen in a couple of months,
Right.
and it's like,
Yeah.
wow, and it's been nice. I've really missed that. That is a big piece. I'm a huge advocate of telework. I'm a huge advocate of virtual meetings. I'm a huge advocate of no meetings. But I think that we have to balance that, right? Because there's the human element of liking to be together, liking to have camaraderie, being able to hang out, talk to each other, and that's something I know Colonel Philcheck has really stressed too. Is that, you got to find that balance. We want to maximize telework, but we also want to make sure that we're staying in touch with folks and that we still have some cohesion. And I can tell you, especially probably the April timeframe, it felt like, man, this is not the way that we really like to operate. And in fact, we got a new flight chief right around that time, and I remember talking to her, and she said, I just don't feel like I'm leading anybody.
Right.
And I said, I got it. You joined us at such a strange time. You come to the squadron and, hey, welcome to the squadron, and nobody's here, and you're brand new, and and it just is the situation in which we find ourselves, and so that can definitely take a toll on morale.
Right.
No doubt. And so that's something I'm very cognizant of as well, is just trying to make sure that people don't get down or feel like, man, what are we doing, or when is this going to end? And
well, I think we've seen some tremendous leadership across the board as this kind of plays out. And you talk about Colonel Filchek and General Kirkland all the way down. The leadership has really come to the forefront, and it's not to say that everybody involved here weren't great leaders before, but the dynamic shift in the way we do day-to-day functions and that leadership, and especially communication, like you talk about, the communication has increased, but I think that's a critical element in leadership and how you try to keep your people cohesive. And I think we've discovered something interesting about ourselves, probably as a society, is that in this day and age of everybody staring down at a cell phone, I think maybe we've discovered that we're really more into personal relationships than we might have thought.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. Yeah. I think that, a lot of us maybe have not realized that prior to. And then suddenly when you find yourself in a situation where, you're staying home most of the time, you're teleworking most of the time, or if you do come to work, maybe you're one of very few in the office. There's tons of information and data out there that back that up. We are social creatures. And so, that's something that has been really, really difficult. So it's nice now that we're starting to phase in, that we're returning to some of that.
Right.
And I see folks again. And so, and I can tell that I think with our folks, they're feeling better about it as well. Right.
Good. And so word on the street has it that you played a pretty critical role in procuring, we talked about the 70,000 cloth masks, but also 5,000 N95 masks, 50,000 gloves, gowns, and goggles for all the people out here at Team Tinker on the front lines. So how is it that you were able to pull that off and does that make you feel, how does it make you feel to know that you played such a critical part in supporting like that?
Yeah. Well, I have to give it up to our supply folks, really. A lot of that stuff is straight in the supply wheelhouse, right? So PPE of all types. And I really have to give it up to them. Not only just leaning forward, but stepping out and making sure that we're looking across the entire spectrum, right?
Right.
And looking, how are we going to procure these items? And so kudos to those folks. DLA has been very instrumental in this as well. So when we talk about getting things on and off the base, at a regular, at a non-depot Air Force base, that would typically be an LRS function.
Right.
But here and at the other sites within AFSC, that's handled by DLA. And so I would be remiss if I didn't say, thank you to DLA for all the work they've done too. And so the masks that we got from them, of course, those were allocated all across AFMC, and we had them on order. And I think we had already received, 20,000 or so. And I remember getting an email, and it was like, hey, these masks are available. Make sure you put an order in. And I was thinking, oh, man, our folks had already leaned forward, and we've already got some of these delivered, right? Mm-hmm. So you say, how does that make you feel? I love when there's a need and when our squadron is able to fulfill that need, right? And so I pride myself on that. I think our squadron prides itself on being able to fulfill some type of logistical need that is out there, right? So yeah, we get the masks, we get the N95 masks. We're prioritizing those based on first responders, so our med group folks, our fire department folks, people directly on the front lines, the gloves, the gowns, the goggles, all of that, and making sure that we have it when they need it, and we continue to do so. So yeah, it's been awesome. again, it's really not me doing that. It's a whole bunch of people, behind me making me look like I know what I'm doing most of the time.
Right.
And and that may sound cliche, but it really is true. Well, I like to talk a lot about how we are the world's greatest LRS, and I know that I kind of do that and laugh about it, but I really do mean that. This has been my favorite job that I've had since I've worked here at Tinker, and it's because of the phenomenal people that we have working that just make it happen. You just say, hey, we need this, and they're already on it,
Right. Mm-hmm.
and all I have to do is circle back and say, we got it,
Well, and it shows. I mean, we sit in staff meetings and things together and different things, and it shows. You brag about your people quite a bit, and I'm sure they really appreciate it. And so it's obviously too early to know all of the lessons that we're going to learn from COVID, but what changes do you see in the LRS remaining permanent once we have really gone back to whatever the new norm is going to look like in the future?
Yeah, that's something we're definitely talking about. I think talking about it across Air Force, across the DoD, is just kind of what are some good things, if you can say that have kind of come out of this, right? What are things that we want to continue to do? And I definitely think the telework thing is huge, and we want to continue to do that. I know that the IT capability has been much more robusted over the last few months, and so the capability is there. I think we should continue to do that. I know we are going to continue to do that in the LRS. Looking at virtual meetings. First off, just what are meetings that we haven't done over the past 3 or 4 months, and maybe nobody noticed, right?
Right.
Maybe we just kind of got into doing stuff because doing stuff kind of made us feel like we were actually being productive. And so, I just want to take an honest look across the squadron and just go, okay, out of the things we can control, what are really the most important things, all right? And then virtual meetings, right? So having people call in if possible, having them be able to get on the DCO, right? While at the same time making sure that we're staying connected. The communication piece, right? It's not just in times of pandemics or times of crisis that we should really be reaching out and seeing how people are doing, right? And so that's something I've really taken to heart in the squadron, is continuing to do that day in and day out, and not letting myself get away from doing that as we get back into normal business.
Right. Good stuff. So, and supply chain and logistics, definitely two of the most critical components to any organization, and certainly, obviously, to one as large as an Air Force base. So with that, Brent, I think that's a good place to leave it for today. Thanks so much for taking a little bit of time out of your busy day, even though you are mostly alone in your building. It's been fun. We've been trying to, just for the listener background, we've been trying to connect on this since before COVID, and we just, for whatever reason, scheduling and everything hasn't worked out. But and Jillian sends her regards. She's of course the mastermind behind all of this Tinker Talk stuff. She wouldn't agree, but she's a critical component to what we're doing here. But
she told me she kind of makes it all happen, So
well, that's actually very true. And just so to throw her a nice plug, she won the AFMC Audio Product of the Year. This Tinker Talks podcast won the MAGCOM level. Command
that's
level.
Awesome.
So and showed very well at the Air Force level. So she's out there making it happen, even though she has to be in her own office at her own house, because that's the social distancing that we live in. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. Again, thanks a lot for coming on, and you guys are doing some really, really incredible work, and the base doesn't move without it, so it's greatly appreciated. And so with that is going to wrap up another episode of the Tinker Talks podcast. Please make sure to tune in. We come in about every other week. I think we're getting back into a normal groove here under the new way we do business. But also make sure that you check out our website, tinker.af.mil, and there's a coronavirus, a COVID website embedded within our Tinker website. And you will find, I promise you, one of the most robust COVID-19 websites anywhere. Our team is really hard at work making sure that thing is updated, and it's updated multiple times a day. So if there's anything that you need to know about the coronavirus, make sure to go there and get that information. But also check us out on Facebook and Instagram. You can find us at Tinker Air Force Base, and of course on Twitter at team Tinker _Team Tinker. Thank you. Too many words to say. So with that, until next time, you guys all stay safe out there as we get back to normal, and we'll talk to you next time. Have a great day and a great week.